The bracket went up on a Tuesday. By Wednesday morning, half the academy had seen it. By Wednesday afternoon, someone had already started a betting pool. Cadet Jordan Hayes, human, Terran exchange program, currently ranked 41st in combined combat assessments, had been paired against Kess'ral of the Vreth Dominion, ranked 3rd in the entire first-year cohort, undefeated in 32 sparring matches, and built like what happened when evolution decided it had a point to prove. The Vreth were feline in the way that a thunderstorm was wet. Technically accurate, deeply insufficient. They stood nearly 2 meters tall on digitigrade legs, with retractable claws that could score durasteel, and a musculature so dense their bodies read as solid mass on standard bioscanners. They had hunted megafauna on their homeworld for 60,000 years before they ever built their first city. Their instincts were not metaphor. They were engineering. Kess'ral was considered exceptional even by Vreth standards. Jordan was considered, by most of the academy, to be something of a curiosity. The observation deck above Training Hall 7 filled up 20 minutes before the match was scheduled. Cadet Orvin, a Sulik with 4 arms and a habit of being present wherever something interesting was about to happen, found a spot near the railing beside his roommate, a heavy-set Dravani named Pell who was already eating something from a wrapped packet. "You actually came," Orvin said. "I come to all the human events," Pell said, not looking up from his food. "They're unpredictable. Kess'ral will finish this in under a minute." "Probably." Pell looked down at the training floor, where Jordan was loosening his shoulders in slow circles, eyes half closed. "But the minute will be interesting." Orvin studied the human for a long moment. Jordan Hayes was not physically impressive by any interspecies metric. Medium height, medium build, the kind of body that read as maintenance rather than weapon. No claws, no venom, no reinforced skeletal structure. His skin was soft enough to bruise with moderate pressure. His vision was poor in low light. He had exactly one set of functional limbs for combat. "I don't understand why they sent them to a combat academy," Orvin said. "I asked Hayes that once," Pell said. "What did he say?" Pell was quiet for a moment. "He said, and I'm quoting directly, because we're good at it." A pause. "He said it the way you'd say something boring. Like he was telling me water was wet." Below them, Kess'ral entered the training floor from the far end. The room got quieter. Kess'ral moved the way all Vreth moved, like stillness was something that happened to other species. Every step was a controlled transfer of potential energy. The instructor running the session, a veteran Dravani named Commander Vask, read the standard rules in a tone that suggested she considered them a formality. No lethal strikes. No permanent injury. Tap out or unconsciousness ends the bout. Jordan nodded. Kess'ral's ears rotated forward. Vask dropped her hand. Kess'ral moved. To the observers on the deck, it looked like the match was over in the first 4 seconds. Kess'ral crossed the distance in a single explosive burst, feinted left with a shoulder drop that had ended 17 previous matches right there, and drove a controlled strike toward Jordan's center mass. Jordan was not where he was supposed to be. Not by much. Barely a half step to the right, but enough that the strike caught his shoulder instead of his sternum. He went with it, spinning back, putting distance between them. He didn't try to counter. He just moved away, reset his stance, and looked at Kess'ral. Said Pell, up on the observation deck. Kess'ral tilted her head. The feint worked on everyone. It had worked on a Dravani cadet who had 50 kilos on this human. She pressed forward again, faster, cycling through the opening sequence she had drilled 10,000 times. Pressure, cut angle, draw the counter, punish the counter. Jordan didn't counter. He absorbed the pressure, took a glancing hit to the ribs that made someone on the deck wince, and moved laterally again. His eyes never left Kess'ral. His expression was, and several observers would later find this specific detail unsettling, calm. Not the forced calm of someone managing fear. The natural calm of someone doing arithmetic. 30 seconds in, Kess'ral had hit him 4 times. None of them clean. All of them landing in the same geometric window. Jordan did not tap out. Jordan did not go down. Jordan reset, every time, to the same stance, and looked at her with that same quiet arithmetic expression. "He's losing," Orvin said, though his voice had shifted into something uncertain. "Watch his eyes," Pell said. At the 45-second mark, something changed. Kess'ral came in with the left cross. Her favorite finisher. The one she set up with a right shoulder feint and a half-step cut, the one that had put down cadets twice Jordan's mass. She loaded it cleanly. Jordan stepped inside it. Not away. Inside. He closed the distance instead of taking it, got inside her reach before the strike could develop power, and drove his elbow into the joint of her shoulder with precise, clinical force. Not hard enough to injure. Hard enough to matter. He followed it immediately with a foot behind her ankle and a push at her center of gravity. And Kess'ral, for the first time in 32 matches, stumbled. She recovered in under a second. She was Vreth. She was built for recovery. But the deck had gone completely silent. He knew the cross was coming. Pell said quietly. He's known for at least 20 seconds. He was just waiting until he understood the setup well enough to be certain. Orvin's forearms had slowly unfolded. He took those hits deliberately. He was reading her. Kess'ral reset. Her tail was rigid. Jordan had learned to read Vreth body language at the Academy's interspecies communication seminars. What her posture said was not anger. It was something more precise than anger. It was the specific discomfort of a hunter whose instincts were giving her information she could not make sense of. She came in again, faster, varying her pattern this time. Jordan got hit twice more. But he moved differently now, not absorbing, but redirecting, angling his body so her strikes shed force against his arms instead of landing true. He was implementing, in real time, the mechanics he had spent a minute cataloging. At the 90-second mark, Kess'ral loaded the left cross again. Old habit. Highest percentage finisher. The shoulder feint was clean. Jordan was already moving before the strike left her shoulder.
He ducked under it, came up on her outside, and drove a short, precise strike into the nerve cluster just below her ribs. The one that Vreth combat manuals listed as a significant vulnerability. The one every Vreth fighter knew about and guarded instinctively throughout a match. Except for the last 3 seconds, when the pressure of the exchange had pushed her guard fractionally, briefly open. Kess'ral made a sound she had never made in a training match before. Her legs went uncertain. Jordan put a foot behind her knee, controlled her descent, and held her there, not pinned, just stopped, with one hand placed with quiet finality at the back of her neck. The match clock read 1 minute, 47 seconds. Commander Vass called it. The silence lasted a full 4 seconds, which was unusual for a room containing 60 young cadets from 20 different species. Then everyone started talking at once. Jordan let Kess'ral up and offered her a hand. She stared at it for a moment. Then she took it, which was something she had also never done before. He rolled his shoulder experimentally. He would have impressive bruises tomorrow. He did not seem particularly concerned about this. "How?" said Kess'ral. It was not quite a question. It was more the sound a worldview made when it needed to be rebuilt from different materials. Jordan shrugged with the shoulder that didn't hurt. "You telegraph the left cross. Your right shoulder drops about 1.5 centimeters before you commit. I needed a few passes to be sure of the timing, but after that it was just a matter of waiting for the right moment to use it." Kess'ral looked at him. "You allowed me to strike you. Repeatedly. To gather information. You were going to hit me anyway," Jordan said. "I figured I might as well learn something while it was happening." She was quiet for a long moment. Among the Vreth, silence after a defeat was not uncommon.
What was uncommon was the quality of this particular silence, which was not the silence of wounded pride, but the silence of genuine recalibration. "On my world," she said finally, "there is no word for what you did. The closest translation would be something like hunting while being hunted. But that is not quite right either." "Probably not," Jordan agreed. "It is considered, by my people, to be something that prey does not do." Jordan picked up his water container from the edge of the floor and took a drink. "That's probably why it worked," he said. Commander Vask reviewed the footage that evening in her office. She watched it 3 times at normal speed and twice more in slow motion, pausing at intervals to examine specific moments. She had been running combat assessments for 11 years. She had watched several thousand matches. She had a well-developed sense of what was interesting and what was merely unusual, and this was both. The first thing she noticed, on the slow playback, was the pattern of Jordan's lateral movements in the first 40 seconds. She had read them initially as defensive repositioning, which was how they appeared in real time. At reduced speed, they looked different. They were not random. They were systematic. Each movement after a contact placed him at a slightly different angle to Kess'ral's dominant striking line. Each position generating data about the next, a sequence of controlled experiments dressed up as evasion. She had watched cadets try to read their opponents before. Every experienced fighter did it. What she had not watched, in 11 years, was a cadet use the first minute of a match as a deliberate data collection exercise, while absorbing hits that most cadets would have tapped out from. The second thing she noticed was the moment Jordan committed. Frame by frame, the decision was visible, not in his body, which gave nothing away, but in his eyes. There was a specific moment, precisely at the 43-second mark, when the quality of his attention changed. Not increased. Changed. Like a calculation completing. He had been ready to end the match for 7 seconds before he ended it. He had waited for the highest percentage moment. Vask sat back in her chair and looked at the frozen image on her screen. Jordan's hand at the back of Kess'ral's neck. His expression exactly as calm as it had been at the start of the bout. She had a form to fill out. The assessment rubric had 5 categories: technique, efficiency, adaptability, composure, and competitive integrity. She worked through them in order. Technique. She scored it and moved on. Efficiency. She paused here. The rubric defined efficiency as the ratio of effective actions to total actions. By that definition, Jordan's score should be mediocre. He had absorbed 17 strikes, which the rubric counted as failed defensive actions. But the rubric had not been written to account for the possibility that absorbing strikes was itself an effective action. She wrote a note in the margin and gave him the score she thought was accurate rather than the one the rubric strictly suggested. Adaptability. Straightforward. High score. Composure. She paused again. The rubric defined composure as maintenance of performance under pressure. Jordan had not been under pressure in any meaningful sense. The pressure had been a tool he was using. She wrote another margin note and scored him accordingly. Competitive integrity. No issues. She submitted the assessment and then sat for a while longer. She had flagged 3 cadet assessments in 11 years for the attention of the Academy's faculty board. Not violations. Not disciplinary matters. Just things that fell outside her framework for what the program was producing. She pulled up the flagging form. She started writing.
The betting pool had been won by a 4th-year Quellian cadet who had put his credits on Hayes and had not told anyone he was doing it, which was wise because the odds the pool was offering were generous enough to make it uncomfortable to be publicly associated with. He collected his winnings quietly and went back to his quarters and sat thinking about why he had bet the way he had. He was a practical person. He did not make bets for sentimental reasons. He had watched Hayes in 3 previous matches and come away with a specific impression. It was not that Hayes was talented, though he was competent enough. It was not that Hayes was lucky, though things tended to work out his way. It was that Hayes approached every match the way you would approach a problem you had not encountered before, with curiosity instead of confidence. And curiosity, in the Quellian's experience, was more durable than confidence under pressure, because confidence could be broken and curiosity could not. He filed the thought away and went to find dinner. On the observation deck, which had mostly emptied, Orvin and Pell were still at the railing. Orvin's recording unit had captured everything. He was still working out how to categorize it. "The faculty are going to review this," he said. "Yes," Pell agreed. "Do you think they'll change something?" "The brackets, maybe. Or the matching criteria." Pell considered this. Below them, the training floor was empty, the lights dimming to stand by. He folded up his wrapper and tucked it away with the deliberate tidiness of someone for whom thinking and tidying were not separate activities. "No," he said finally. "Why not?" "Because they won't know what to change." Pell looked at the empty floor for another moment. "The brackets are designed to create competitive matches. This was a competitive match. The matching criteria are designed to ensure safety. Nobody got seriously hurt. What Hayes did isn't against any rule. It's just not something the rules were written to account for." "It wasn't just what he did," Orvin said. "It was that he was never, at any point, what Kess'ral thought he was." She walked in there thinking she understood what she was fighting. She never caught up. Pell nodded slowly. "There's a phrase for that in one of the human languages," Orvin continued. He had been working through a human linguistics elective. In their older military writing, they call it asymmetric engagement, when one side is fighting a completely different fight than the other side thinks is happening. That's a clinical way to put it. Hayes is a clinical kind of person. Pell made a sound of agreement. They stood there a moment longer. "I wonder," Orvin said, "what it looks like when he does it with higher stakes." Pell picked up his bag. "I imagine we'll find out eventually," he said. "These things tend to find the people who are capable of them." They left the observation deck.
The lights finished dimming. The Arena 7 floor sat empty in the low standby glow, the scoring system's last logged result still sitting in its buffer, waiting to be archived. 1 minute, 47 seconds. Kess'ral's undefeated record, broken. Reviewing faculty, 1, with margin notes. The record it set, still standing. Down in the dormitory wing, Jordan Hayes was doing what he did every evening after assessments. He was sitting at his desk with his notes open, reviewing the match from memory, writing down the things he had learned. The things Kess'ral had taught him. He wrote for 20 minutes. Then he closed the notes, turned off the desk light, and went to sleep. He had an early class in the morning.